Hey everyone, it's Peter Kerr from Daydream Nation, and I've got Bicyclelegs in the seat again. How are you, mate?
Yeah, good.
We are doing a $20 challenge. I put a challenge out to Bicyclelegs to give him $20, go to his local record store and see what he comes up with. Likewise, Bicyclelegs gave me $20. I went to a record fair over the Easter break. So we're going to just see what it bought us. So over to you, Bicyclelegs.
Okay.
Show us your first pick.
Well, I managed to pick up 5 records. The first 4 are from one of my favorite record stores here in Brisbane. Shout out to Stash Records, particularly Skipper, who runs the place. He's a great guy. He actually these were 4 for $20, these records. And even then, because I bought something else, he gave me a discount on it and I got the 4 records for only $15. So, you know, he's a really good bloke. And if you're ever in Brisbane, go out to Camp Hill, do yourself a favor.
I'll put the link. I will put the link in the show. So, yeah.
But, I got 4 quite varied records from Stash. And you might turn your nose up at the first one, but I'm unapologetic about it because I do love me some early Bee Gees, like pre-disco Bee Gees.
I love the early Bee Gees.
Yeah.
Nice.
This one's called To Whom It May Concern. It's from 1972. And they were going through a bit of a lull in their career at this point. You know, their albums weren't really selling. They were still having the odd hit single, but the albums weren't really shifting. It wasn't until sort of 1975 and Main Course and the disco era Bee Gees that they really sort of got their charts mojo back. But this album has one reasonably big hit on it, which is a song called Run to Me. And it's a fairly typical sort of Bee Gees lush ballad, you know, orchestrated, really beautiful. And most of the tracks on here are like that too. But there's like 4 I want to point out that are quite different from that sort of lush ballady Bee Gees of that sort of early 70s. There's a song called Paper Mache Cabbages and Kings, which is a longish song. It's about 5 minutes, so long by Bee Gees standards. And it sort of goes through 3 or 4 different parts. It's like a little mini sort of Beatles kind of medley kind of song. It's a really interesting song. There's a song called Bad Bad Dreams that would have been really good for your show when you were doing the show with pop acts that do like hard rock songs, because it really rocks hard. It's a really good song. Then there's Road to Alaska, which is a really sort of country rock kind of thing, which is really fun. It's in sort of a 12-bar blues kind of thing. And then there's Sweet Song of Summer to end the album, which is this really weird sort of uses sort of Moog synthesizer and creates this really sort of eerie, sort of almost early Pink Floyd-y kind of atmosphere to it. So those are a few tracks that I think are really worth sort of picking out from this album.
That's an outstanding start, Bicyclelegs. May I ask, does it play well and on what label?
Yeah, no, it's Australian, so it's on the Spin Records.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah.
I've got a few singles on the Spin label myself, a few BG45s.
Yeah. So it's an original Australian pressing, this one. It plays, all of my records ended up playing quite well. So, it was a good listen. And the cover's in nice nick as well, as you can see. You know, it's not all dog-eared and that sort of thing, which I can't say for 1 or 2 of my other ones. But, it's a good record. I recommend it.
I'll put a quick shout out. Everyone must see that Bee Gees documentary. I'm not sure if you've seen it, but it's absolutely fascinating. It tells the whole story of the Bee Gees. And I think a lot of people forget that they were a chart-busting group prior to Saturday Night Fever. They had, like in the late 60s, so many hits. But that's one album that I think I've seen a few times, and I'll definitely track it down. No, that's a really good start. All right, the first one I got, similar to Bicyclelegs, I got about 5 albums for $20, and I picked up this one, very surprising. Wings Over America.
Oh,
the triple
3-disc
album
set.
Yes. So when you look at the actual the disc itself, they look a bit scuzzy. They've got fingerprints, a few scratches, but I cleaned it up and it plays beautifully. So viewers, sometimes appearances aren't everything. I've actually bought records that look spotless and they have been absolute nightmares. They've had pops and skips, but this one didn't look very good, just cleaned it up and it plays beautifully. So this album, it's a triple album, came out in 1976, and it was basically the tour between May and June in 1976. 800 hours of tape were reviewed and 5 versions of every song were presented to Paul McCartney to pick the final album, and they picked about 30 songs. It's only got 5 Beatles songs. They're all killer, but it's really Wings in their prime. So they were coming off, I think, you had the huge hits like Band on the Run, Red Rose Speedway. It's the classic lineup of Denny Lane, Jimmy McCulloch, and Joe English on drums. But the performance on this one, I don't know if you've got a Bicyclelegs, but it's a great album. And I was actually stoked to pick this up, for $5. Wonderful gatefold. There you go.
It's it'd be a top 10 live album for me. Absolutely. It's a wonderful live album. The recordings are great, the performances are great. As you say, it's very Wings heavy. He was only doing a few Beatles songs at the time. I mean, you go to a Paul McCartney concert now and it's 2/3 Beatles stuff. But he was very much concentrating on Wings being Wings. And I think that was a great thing. No, it's an absolutely wonderful album, and you did brilliantly getting that for $5.
Yeah, no, that was a big surprise. So there you go, Wings Over America. And I definitely recommend to all the viewers getting that album. All right, what's your next one?
My next one is a band that I owned the first 2 albums of, and I always really, really liked them, but I haven't sort of explored the later catalogue much. And that is the band Blood, Sweat and Tears. And this is BS&T 4. So as you would imagine, their 4th album. It's the first album they've done since their debut, and their debut was the only album they did with Al Kooper. And then after that, they got David Clayton Thomas in as their lead singer. And on the 2nd and 3rd albums, most of the songs are cover versions. They don't write a lot of originals. And in their later albums, that's very much the case too. But every song bar one on this one is an original. And it's really good. The most obvious comparison for Blood, Sweat and Tears for people who don't know them is early Chicago. But I think Blood, Sweat and Tears were a bit more jazzy than early Chicago were. Chicago always described themselves as a rock and roll band with horns. They never really aspired, except for like one album, to be much of a jazz band. Whereas Blood, Sweat and Tears have very much got a lot of jazz in them. But there's a lot of rock and roll on this album too. Definitely recommended. There's some really good songs. Al Kooper actually comes back and writes a song for them on this album, a song called John the Baptist, which is a really good song. The only cover version is a cover of Take Me in Your Arms, the one that was later made famous by the Doobie Brothers. There's some really good songs on here. High on a Mountain, Valentine's Day, Go Down Gambling. Yeah, definitely a good album and well worth picking up if you see it in the cheap bin.
Well, you set a very high standard. Blood, Sweat and Tears, I'm familiar with the hits like Spinning Wheel, etc. I'm familiar with I can actually close my eyes and visualize the Greatest Hits album, which absolutely has sold by the bucket load. But I don't think I've seen many Blood, Sweat and Tears albums, like studio albums in the wild. So that's a bit of a cue. Well done. And it plays well, obviously.
Yeah,
and sorry, I'm being a little bit of a nerd here. What label is it on?
Again, original pressing, CBS.
Ah, nice.
The old orange CBS label.
Yes. Okay, beautiful. All right. Next one I am going to put up is Slade.
Oh, nice. I need that one.
So that's Old, New, Borrowed and Blue from 1974. So probably the biggest song off this album was My Friend Stan, which went to number 2. Everybody was a top 10 hit. They were still at the peak of their powers. This album went to number 1. US number 168. They didn't really transfer very well over to the States. And in Australia went top 10. Produced by Chaz Chandler, who happened to manage the band. And Chaz Chandler was the bassist for the Animals and has done a lot of heritage rock acts. He's a bit of a legend. Do I like it or not? One thing that sort of stuck out for me is Noddy's vocals are as if he's got the microphone like this. It's like it's really out there. And to me, I found it a little, I don't know if irritation was the word, but to me, I found it quite noticeable. I've got a lot of Slade, but this album, I don't know if it's been produced. It's got very raw production. It's a lot rougher. It's a lot more rocky than the earlier, more glam pop friendly songs. And I think this album was, it still went to number 1, but I think after this they started to do a little bit of a dip and a bit of a slide.
Yeah.
You had Slade and Flames, you had the movie, and they sort of were in the wilderness for a considerable period of time until they had that early 80s heavy metal hard rock recovery. But it doesn't play remarkably well. It's got a lot of scratches, but I can tolerate it. And it's got that, those early 70s albums always had that nice sheen about it. If you can see it, it's like really kind of this glossy sheen that you don't see in a lot of modern albums. There you go. There's the Lads, and it's got all the lyrics. So, yeah.
No, that's a Slade album that I've been looking for. And so, I've got to keep an eye out for that one, because I don't have enough Slade in my collection. I've only got a couple of their albums.
Yeah.
But something I forgot to mention with this Blood, Sweat and Tears one, in America, this was a triple gatefold. In Australia, just an ordinary sleeve. They did that a lot with Australian pressings. They would skimp on the sort of gatefolds and the inserts and that sort of thing.
Yeah, that's common. Even in today with CDs, there's a lot of the deluxe CDs that had the bells and whistles in America, but in Australia just had the single insert, which was quite disappointing. But anyway, all right, number 3 for you.
Okay, number 3 for me is an artist that's completely new to me, and so I was taking a punt. But this is an artist that I've heard sort of Pete Pardo from Sea of Tranquility talk about a lot. And the artist in question is a guitar player called Al Di Meola. And the album is called Elegant Gypsy. So this is a US pressing. It's on the Columbia label.
Very shiny.
Yes.
Good sheen.
It's in good condition.
Yep.
This is most of the tracks. There's 6 tracks on it. It's jazz fusion, basically, but very guitar-heavy jazz fusion, all instrumental. There's a couple of acoustic tracks to sort of balance it out, but on the whole, it's really sort of fast, shreddy, jazz fusion-y kind of playing. It's a lot of fun. It's really good if you like that sort of thing. If you're into your sort of Weather Report and your Return to Forever and that sort of thing. Think of that, but with lots of guitar. This isn't quite the same as, say, a Mahavishnu Orchestra. Mahavishnu Orchestra, I think, were much more knotty and almost King Crimson-y in their early stuff. Whereas this is slicker, but it's still really good technical jazz fusion playing. So, definitely worth picking up if you find it cheap.
Right. Do you mind flipping over the record? What's on the flip side of the... Okay, nice. And that's when album covers, folks. There was a little bit of art and craft to it,
Yeah.
Nice. Okay. A little bit of trivia on this one. See if you know who this next artist is. So I was born Bernard jury in 1942 in Middlesex. In the early 1960s, I was in a band called Shane Fenton and the Fentones.
Okay.
I had a couple of UK hits. I'm a Moody Guy, Walk Away, It's All Over Now, and Cindy Birthday. My career was sort of dormant for a period of 10 years. And then there was a character that was introduced by one David Bowie called Ziggy Stardust. I introduced an alias for my character that played on those words. I had a number one hit in the UK, Jealous Mind.
Yeah, I know.
7 top 10 entries, You, Good Love Can Never Die. And I'm talking about Alvin Stardust.
Yeah.
So this is Rock with Alvin. This came out in 1975. I'm not familiar with Alvin Stardust, but I know he was very integral to the glam rock story in the UK, had a number of hits. He was much older. So he actually, his career, going back to, as I said, with Shane Fenton and the Fentones, actually predated the Beatles. And he based his whole sort of alias on the Ziggy Stardust name. And he had this sort of rockabilly sort of persona. And as you can see in the back album cover, played that sort of rockabilly type of character. This album has a lot of covers on it, has an Eddie Cochran song, has Everly Brothers. It's a little bit middle of the road, but there's a little bit, if you like that glam rock, early 70s, there's enough pop and rock, but to me, I thought it was a little bit middle of the road. And just reading a lot of the online reviews, they said that's probably not his best, but hey, I'm just taking a punt on it. This is part of the $20 challenge. And yeah, I've heard that name Alvin Stardust so many times, but I had never actually couldn't recall a song, and just picked it up. So there you go, Alvin Stardust.
Well, it's an interesting thing. In the sort of early 70s in the UK, you had a couple of things going on simultaneously. One was the glam thing, but then you also had this sort of like 50s rock and roll revival, you know, bands like Shawaddy Waddy and that sort of thing. And you had sort of the revival of Teddy Boys and things like that. And it looks like for his image, he's like doing a cross between the two and sort of putting them all together.
Absolutely. And he passed away, I think, in the last 10 years. And all these rock luminaries came out of the woodwork, just, you know, whether it was Bowie when he was still alive. I think Roger Daltrey said he had a lot of accolades for Alvin Stardust. So he certainly had quite a few fans. But I don't know if he had too much of an impact in Australia. I don't recall hearing a song. Do you have any Alvin in your collection?
No, can't say that I do. I think, you know, sort of artists like David Essex were bigger here than Alvin Stardust.
Yes.
But
there you go. But part of the glam rock story. So no, I'm glad I bought it, and maybe a few more spins it might sort of hit me a little bit, have much more of an impact. But just my initial thoughts, it was a little bit middle of the road.
And I could be wrong, but I think some of those early Shane Fenton and the Fentones records were actually produced by George Martin. So,
right, okay, interesting. There you go. All right, what's your number 4?
My number 4 is the last one from this from Stash, and I left the sticker on this because if I didn't, you probably wouldn't believe me that I got this in a cheap bin. And it's an artist that I don't have really anything much on vinyl for because usually they're too darned expensive. I'll just hold it up and New Order.
Somebody's made a mistake.
No, I'll tell you what happened. It's got this, as you can see, it's got this sort of like onion skin on the outside of the cover that goes around it. And the cover, it's a little bit torn, this onion skin. See, it's got a little bit of a tear in it. And Skipper always says to me, I can't abide a bad cover. Whereas I'm always the sort of person where I'll take a record that's in good nick, but the cover's sort of not very good, over the other way around any day of the week. And the record in this one is actually in nice condition. It's missing the insert, so I mean that's another thing that might sort of have it pegged down a little bit, but still, this is 1985. It's a great album. It's definitely a crossover album for them. You can still hear little bits of Joy Division in a couple of the songs, like Love Vigilantes, but there's definitely some stuff. They'd done Blue Monday by this stage, so they were definitely sort of hitting the dance floor as well. But even with those sort of really synthy dance floory kind of songs at this stage of their career anyway, you could still hear that post-punk sound in those synthy songs. So yeah, I mean,
absolutely.
This was just an incredible record to pick up in a cheap bin. So
yeah, like Peter Hook and the bass is really just up in the mix.
Right up. Yeah,
that is fantastic. So as I said, when I first saw that, when you put it up, I thought there's a mistake. So you've done very, very well. I have seen that in the wild, but for quite a pretty penny.
Yeah.
And it's a first edition, right?
Yeah. But that's why I keep going to Stash, because every so often I will find some really great stuff there. If it's just not quite the quality where Skipper thinks he can sell it for full price, he'll often just chuck it in the cheap bins. And
that's fantastic. No, well done. That's great acquisition. All right. The next one is a bit more classic rock, and it's Rod Stewart. Every Picture Tells a Story. I think everyone should have this in their record collection. It's got all the hits like Maggie May, I'm Losing You, classic band with Rod and Ronnie Wood, and interesting sort of fold out sort of. There you go.
Yeah.
When albums was there was a lot of effort put into it. There you go. But this is his greatest album, I think. I saw him recently. Good show. But his early 70s stuff, late 60s, early 70s is the material that shines. And I would rather listen to that than his mid 70s onward Hollywood period. But it's just such a great album, and I don't really need to say much more. I think everyone knows the songs, and it's rightly regarded as a classic. And I sort of put it up there with Exile on Main Street. I think Rod had that. He's a great interpreter. He's not a writer, but his interpretation of these songs. And when I was watching the show live, Maggie May, it's just a wonderfully crafted song, tells a story, and, it takes you on a journey within 3 to 4 minutes. And, he was very much in the infancy of his career to pull something like that out of the bag is just, something to behold. This album went to #1 in the US, #1 in the UK, and I think in Australia as well. And it must have something going forward. But look, I know this has been, you've probably seen this in the wild everywhere, but I've got it on CD, but I thought, look, just get it on vinyl and, got to have it in your collection.
Yeah.
And it plays okay. It plays okay.
No, good choice. The early 70s Rod. And then I felt like he had a little renaissance in the early 80s. Like he did some sort of like new wavy sort of stuff. Things like Young Turks. I love that song. I think
that played well. That plays well. Yeah. But Atlantic Crossing, I think the second side of Atlantic Crossing, a lot of people say he sort of jumped the shark. But and let's not talk about the American Songbook, hey? All right, what have you got for the fifth choice?
Okay, my fifth choice comes from the RSPCA Op Shop. So you don't normally find good stuff in op shops here in Australia, or at least I don't. It's usually sort of Richard Clayderman and James Last and Kamal. I don't know if our overseas viewers really know who Kamal is, but it's just the sort of stuff your grandparents listened to, and not really good. But I got this for the grand sum of 50 cents, And it's a band that I've been collecting and getting into. So I was really happy to find this. It's Pieces of Eight by Styx. And look at that, just to prove, there's the price sticker, 50 cents.
What the hell?
Well, to be fair, the cover is ratty.
It doesn't look too bad. It looks kind of shiny.
When you open it up, there's been water damage, so it's not stuck together.
I get it. But how's the vinyl play?
The vinyl, it needed a really, really good clean. It was filthy as.
Yep.
So, but it was just one of those things, 50 cents. If you've done your dough on a 50-cent record, then so be it, Yeah. You can still put the album cover up on your wall. But no, I gave it a really, really deep clean in my good old trusty spin clean. And it cleaned up pretty well. It's a South African pressing, so there's something unusual for you. There were a few of them there, but that was the only one of theirs that I didn't have. So that's the one I picked up.
I love Styx. I've got most of their albums. I don't have a lot of their later albums, but I've got the 70s and early 80s period, and it's great prog rock. And that is a really good album.
Yeah, probably it's for me so far in my Styx sort of explorations, because I really only knew them from the song Mr. Roboto, which was a big hit here in 83, I think.
I knew them from the song Babe going earlier. I didn't even know Mr. Roboto that much. Babe was like a top 5 song. Yeah,
I was a bit young for me, I think. The late 70s, I really hadn't quite got into music. I was still, pre-teen, so... But Mr. Roboto came out when I was about 12 years old, and I fell in love with it. But I never really explored the band. I would say for me, this is probably second behind The Grand Illusion for the ones that I haven't got the really, really early, like the first 3 or 4 albums. So I don't really know what they sound like. But this one and The Grand Illusion are my 2 favorites so far.
Well, when you get the 3 albums, we should do a ranking show because I really like Styx, and I've been getting into them in the last 10 years and finding them for reasonable prices. So they didn't really sort of hit it off in Australia. I don't think they've ever toured Australia, but that is probably, I'd say, top 3 Styx for me. You've done well for 50 cents, my man. That's really, really good.
Well, thanks.
All right. My number 5 is a bit of a strange one. This is Hunters and Collectors, but it's the first album. But the cover's missing.
Yeah, that's just the inner sleeve.
Yes. So, folks, what you've got to ask yourself, it plays well. Do you need the cover? So for $5, I picked up the Hunters and Collectors first album. It's on the, there you go, the white label.
Yes,
plays pretty well, and it's kind of unique. One of the vinyl is on 45, and the other one is on 33.
Yeah. Well, it was basically sort of an album, then like a second disc of like 3 bonus tracks.
Yeah.
But fabulous album.
Post-punk, it's grungy. It is arguably probably one of their best albums. A lot of people are familiar with the more commercial, watered down, I say watered down, but much more palatable to the rock audience, like from What's a Few Men onwards. Yeah. But this is when they really had that spiky, punky sort of flair about them.
Yeah.
And the lyrics just really tap into the psyche of, the Aussie bloke and life in Australia. Very great social observational lyrics, but the playing on it is just so aggressive and out there. And I know you're a big fan of Hunters and Collectors, or early in Hunters and Collectors.
Yeah, no, those first couple of albums also have a quite a sort of a krautrocky kind of feel. Not so much sort of the spacey krautrock, but more the sort of more aggressive, like Can. In fact, I think the name Hunters and Collectors came from a Can song.
Yeah.
But Yeah, that's a great album. It would be a top 3 Hunters and Collectors album for me. I've always had a soft spot for the second one too, The Fireman's Curse, which even the band kind of disowned that album because they think they went too experimental with that one. But I actually really, really like it. So, yeah, great band. If you haven't checked them out, you know, viewers from overseas, because they never really did anything overseas, like as far as making success for themselves. Definitely a band worth checking out. And I would definitely say start with the early stuff because it's the most interesting.
Absolutely, just work your way through. But I guess if you saw that in the wild, would you pick that up for $5? I don't.
Yes.
I mean, you've got the vinyl and you've got the inserts. It'd be nice to have the cover, but for $5, it's all there.
You know, it's one of those things where if I see an album, you know, and it's a bit ratty or whatever, and I'm taking a punt on it, you know, I don't know whether I'm going to like it or not. I'll buy it, take it home, listen to it. And then if I really, really like it, I'll look for a better copy of it to upgrade it. And I'm in a great position because my best mate is a fellow called Grant. Hi, Grant, if you're watching. Not Grant Arthur, I should say, although he's a good mate too. But no, he lives just down the road from me, about half an hour's drive. And he's only just been sort of starting his vinyl career in the last few years or so, just collecting again. And so often if I do upgrade one of my records, I'll just give it as a hand-me-down to him. So, and he's very grateful for them, as you can imagine. So, yeah, no, definitely, you know. And the other thing I wanted to say too is if you see albums, especially 60s albums, and they look a bit sort of ratty or a bit scratched up or whatever, take a punt on them because those old 60s pressings, they could take a licking and still play well, you know?
Absolutely. And the vinyl is thick and you've got that nice, warm analog feel to it. So as I said, like going with the Paul McCartney, you know, some of these records that you just give it a bit of a dust up and they play really well. And I've actually bought some albums where you look at it, you've got it under the light and you play it and they've absolutely been atrocious. It's, you know, it's like a go figure sort of situation. And for that matter, I've actually bought, you know, modern pressings of albums. It's so frustrating, Bicyclelegs. For example, I bought an Amel the Sniffers. I bought an original pressing of an album and it had pops and clicks, had to take it back. So, you know, it's, you just can't work it out. You've got to take a punt. It is a bit of a punt.
I love collecting vintage vinyl, but it is a crapshoot. You know, as you said, you will get records that look absolutely beaten up. My copy of Lou Reed's Transformer, I got it in a bulk lot years and years ago. And it looks terrible. It looks horrible, but it plays beautifully. And then, you'll get records that look near mint and you put them on and there's just so much background noise that they're almost unlistenable.
Like if you go into a record store, what I do is I do take the vinyl out and I do have a bit of a squeeze just to see, especially if you're going to be asked to pay $30 or $40. And, you know, some of these record stores are quite arbitrary in regards to their rating or what's excellent and what's near mint. And, you know, comparative to what you see, it looks way out. I guess my rule of thumb is if I see a deep scratch, I kind of avoid it. Or I will take it up to the counter and get them to play on that track that has the deep scratch. Do you have any tips?
Yeah, I mean, that was the one I was going to mention is, you know, a lot of, especially smaller secondhand record stores will in the corner have a little record player set up, you know, so that you can have a listen to something. If they do and you're at all worried about something, go and have a listen to it. That it's there for that reason, so don't feel like you're putting them out or anything.
Absolutely, and it's a great way to not waste, but it's a great way to have an afternoon of just listening to some vinyl, you know, and checking it out. But it is a bit of a crapshoot. But I do recommend everyone, take the vinyl out and have a look at it.
Oh, absolutely. Never buy a vintage vinyl unless you've looked at the disc. You've got to have a look at the disc, even if it says near mint on the sticker. Always take it out and have a look.
And I've seen some really wacky gradings. I guess you have as well, where somebody's put near mint and they're nowhere near mint.
Yes. Yeah, you get that more with sort of Discogs sellers and things like that. Most secondhand record stores absolutely. I go to are pretty reputable. So otherwise you just don't go there anymore, so.
Yep. Okay, so fantastic. I love your 5. I think we've both done pretty well. I think on social media, you shared that you got a pretty nifty acquisition of quite a rare record.
Yes.
And for a very good price. So I thought it'd be, we'll call this the brag section of the show. And I've got one. I don't know, it's probably not as good as yours, but I wouldn't mind just showing it to the viewers. But please share this really nifty little acquisition.
Well, this comes from a shop called Rockaway in Carindale Shopping Centre here in Brisbane. And, I was really surprised to see this for $15. This is a prime example of what we were just talking about. The record is not near mint by any stretch, and they didn't, they actually had a sticker on it saying, some scuffs or whatever, so they're upfront about it. So I took it over to their little record player and had a listen to see if it would play. And it seemed to play fine. I mean, obviously didn't stay there and listen to the whole album, but I just did a few needle drops and that sort of thing. And the album, ladies and gentlemen, is Kill 'Em All by Metallica. This is a 1987 pressing. It's got the insert too. It's on Elektra Records. So this was the first pressing of this in Australia. The original 1983 release didn't get released here. So this was the first Australian pressing of this album.
Nice.
The vinyl itself, I don't know if it'll come up on the camera all that well, but it definitely is. I mean, it looks kind of glossy because I gave it a good clean.
It's got a bit of nice little sheen.
There are scuffs and whatever, and when you do play it, there's some pop and crackle, but nothing that overpowers the music. And I don't mind a little bit of pop and crackle on my vintage vinyl because it gives you that character of this is a much loved record. It obviously got played 100 times, or but it still plays fine. There's no skips or jumps or anything like that. And as I say, the music is, loud, as you would know. It definitely, the popping and the crackling doesn't overpower the music. You only really hear it in between the songs. So the other thing is, this is actually a misprint. I don't know if I'll be able to show it on the camera. I'll try to.
Yep.
That
so the
song on
this
here
is a mispress?
Yeah, it's a misprint on the label. So everybody would know, who knows Metallica, that there's a song on this album called Jump in the Fire. On the label here, I don't know if you can see it, but it actually says Jump in the Air. This is only sold once on Discogs, this pressing. It was near mint, so it's not, it was a much better copy than this one, but still, it sold on Discogs for $300. I got this for $15.
Right. Well, that's a great win. So Jump in the Fire, misprint, Jump in the Air, yes. $15 on Discog, $300. Well done. When you were in the store, did you realize that there was something? Did you have the knowledge? Do you actually go into the store? Do you look it up on Discogs when you're at the store, just to do a bit of a cross reference?
Absolutely. I mean, I have all my stuff catalogued on Discogs, at least because I used to have, and I still do it occasionally, but I used to have a horrible habit of buying records I already owned. So when you've got a big collection, you sometimes forget what you've got.
Yep.
And so I catalogued everything on Discogs. Took me months, but it was well worth doing. And now, if I'm at all in doubt, I go onto my Discogs and I look and see, is it in my collection or not? So, when I saw this, I looked it up, see what pressing it was and that sort of thing. And then I saw there were 2 pressings and one was a misprint. So I looked at the label just to see, is this one the misprint? And lo and behold, it was.
Well done. No, that's a good little score. So there you go. There are nuggets there to be found. You've just got to persevere and just keep looking. And you can find it in the weirdest places. All right. I'll finish up with something. I don't think this is in the class of yours, but I thought it was nice. I'm looking to build up a bit of a collection of Skyhooks albums, and I picked this up at the last Sydney Record Fair at Glebe, and its ego is a dirty word, but I picked this up for $30, but it is actually on the album label Mercury.
Oh, it's a US pressing, is it?
It's a US pressing, and I have not seen too many US pressings of Skyhooks. And it plays well. It's beautiful and shiny. Let's say sort of rated as an excellent. And it's got that nice hard cardboard.
Yeah.
Not the flimsy, and there are the lads. And it helps that it's a bloody good album.
Yeah. And it's a different track listing, the US one from the Australian one.
Yes. But there you go. So ego is a dirty word, and it's a really good album and on the Mercury label. So that's my share.
Yeah. We'll have to do a Skyhook show sometime too, because
absolutely we will indeed. We will. Thank you, Bicyclelegs. You've delivered the goods, and you did really well with the $20 challenge. And this is a lot of fun. We should do this again, maybe the second half of the year. Please like and subscribe to the Bicyclelegs channel. Plenty of content. Every Saturday, 11 p.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time, there is a show being played. Please like and subscribe to Rock Daydream Nation. Lots of content. Tell us, share your comments as to some, fantastic purchases that you recently got on, whether it's at your record store, on Discogs or eBay, whatnot. We like to read your comments. And me and Bicyclelegs, see you later. Bye.
Bye.